The Finals, this brand new FPS from Embark Studios, offers one of the most visually impressive combat experiences that I've ever seen in a video game. But why is The Finals the only game to have achieved this level of nuanced destruction in a multiplayer experience, and get it to run incredibly well even at 4K resolution? Today I want to talk a bit about the amazing tech that was developed for The Finals and how to refine your experience even further by tweaking your settings. Now, before we get into this brand new destruction tech that the devs invented for this game, I want to quickly thank Nvidia for sponsoring this video and their DLSS 3 tech that's in the game. As you'll see later in the video, The Finals runs at some crazy high frame rates, but for the absolute maximum performance, DLSS upscaling provides uncompromised visuals at higher frame rates with AI enhanced upscaling and DLSS 3 frame generation to boost those frames even further. Nvidia's FrameGen tech creates in-between frames using the optical flow acceleration hardware on the RTX 40 series GPUs, combined with the data from the previous and next frame rendered, plus motion vectors from the game's engine to figure out where every pixel on the screen moved between those two frames. The effect is smoother looking gameplay and a boost to your overall frames per second. Plus, The Finals also offers Nvidia's reflex options, which can reduce your latency by up to 57% in GPU-bound scenarios. Esports games are about getting whatever advantage you can get over your opponent, and the more frames and lower latency you have, the bigger advantage that will be. Check out the link below for more information on this tech. Alright, let's talk about some of the other truly next-gen tech that's on display in The Finals, and that is its destruction. Every gunfight, or explosion fight I should really say, leaves the surrounding areas in ruin, and it's not just smoke and mirror tech. The destruction in The Finals is real and synced with all the game clients on the server. So if you shoot an RPG at a wall, it'll break apart in realistic chunks, and those chunks will be identical for all players. Destruction is often used as visual dressing in most games, where the debris is either fully animated in the way that it breaks apart to avoid client discrepancies in multiplayer, or the chunks and rubble just quickly fade away as to not pronounce the desync between game clients. But in The Finals, dynamic destruction is a fundamental aspect of the actual gameplay loop. If you say you want to try and cash out on a roof that's too exposed, it's not a problem. Just drop your cash out down 3 stories through every single floor along the way. Now it's indoors and easier to defend. Pesky teams huddled around a cash out inside? No problem, just blow up all the walls and suddenly those players are pretty much outdoors again. Now technically not every element of the destruction is dynamic in that the breakpoints for the objects are not realistically calculated from the points of impact in real time. That simply isn't doable for multiplayer games where the destruction has to sync between players. It's just way too much information to send via netcode. So buildings in The Finals do instead have pre-calculated breakpoints, but the chunks formed by the destruction have dynamic physics, so when they fall they can collide with other objects and players to land in unique unscripted ways. So while you might not be able to make precisely RPG-shaped holes in everything, you can still blow out walls, destroy floors and ceilings, or even completely level buildings to the ground in extremely realistic and satisfying ways. When you see a building leveled to the ground in other multiplayer games, it's usually a highly scripted event so that players just trigger that scripted event on their clients and then you don't have to deal with all the complex netcode of dynamic destruction. The Finals takes that much more dynamic approach where there's no scripted set piece animation. If you blow out the foundation of a wall, the building will naturally break above it. But most importantly, when that building crumbles, even when it crumbles dynamically, it'll still be the exact same crumble for every player on the server, which is truly that magical tech that they've invented. Now, the server-side physics aren't just limited to destruction. The levels are loaded with props that can be picked up and flung across the map for various purposes. Obvious examples are the red exploding tanks, fire, gas, and foam barrels, but the less obvious examples would be stuff like trash cans, work lights, and the revive statues or cash boxes. And these items can actually be used in interesting ways. If you want, say, your placeable turret to be a mobile turret, throw it on a prop and then you can carry that prop around with you, and the turret will even engage enemies. Perhaps you sense that your opponents have really locked down an area? Well, you can throw a trash can covered in turrets or C4 at them and let it do the work for you. Need to throw a cash box further than normal? Put C4 on it and detonate it in mid-air. Want to bounce an exploding canister off of a wall? If you put C4 on it and detonate it right before it impacts the surface, it'll bounce off that surface and then explode after a short delay. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me if these mechanics turn into actual match-winning strategies. And again, this type of gameplay wouldn't be possible without a server-side physics system. But they don't just stop there at Newtonian physics. Even simpler stuff like fire behaves how you would expect. On concrete or other inflammable surfaces, it'll just go out on its own. But if you light grass or trees on fire, not only does it stay lit for longer, but the fire starts to spread. And the thing that really makes me tip my hat to the developers over at Embark is that all of this stuff runs smooth as butter thanks to some extremely smart tech, while maintaining some of the best visuals I've seen in any game. The fidelity of the textures and models in the finals is impressive no matter how close you look at them. Even stuff that I don't normally like to focus on, such as cosmetics for characters, have tons of small details and impressive texturing that just makes you wonder how this game is only 17 gigabytes fully installed. Games these days tend to want to take up your entire hard drive's worth of storage space. The finals almost seems respectful by comparison. Now, as impressed as I am with the finals performance, there's always room for optimization, and I've put together a list of settings that you can tweak to improve your performance with minimal visual downgrade. I'd recommend setting your view distance to epic, anti-aliasing on high, shadows on high, post-processing at medium, and global illumination resolution on medium. Now when it comes to RTX global illumination, I saw it having about a 4% performance impact, so if you got the hardware overhead, go for it, but it might hit harder when there's a lot more destruction happening. Now the settings with the biggest impacts on FPS were going from low to epic with the shadows, post-processing, effects, and global illumination resolution. By far the heaviest setting was effects, which dropped FPS by about 28% when you go from low to epic. Post-processing was second at around 12%, and global illumination resolution was at around 12%, and shadows clocked in at around 9%. These are the settings that you'll want to dial in the most if you're still not happy with the FPS in game. View distances, textures, and foliage all had less than a 2% performance impact when I was going from high to low, so cranking them up is probably fine for the most part. When it comes to latency, if you have the option to turn on NVIDIA Reflex, it's a no-brainer. This basically dropped my latency down to around 4 milliseconds, which is crazy for any game, let alone one that looks this good and performs this well. And then of course, feel free to play around with that epic frame gen tech if you really want to send your frame rate through the roof. It does add a little bit to the latency, so it really just depends if you want more frames or lower latency. Here's a little chart with my setting recommendations if you just want an easy example. So overall, that's what I'd recommend as best bang for the buck when it comes to your optimization settings. I hope you guys enjoyed this little tech dive into what's going on behind the scenes with the finals. I'm super impressed with this game, and I'm really excited to follow its progress in the future. Up next, check out this launch day video showing some more live gameplay with me and Matimio and one of the devs from the finals playing and winning some tournaments. I think you'll enjoy it, and as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.